Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit USAglobalTV.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Monday. I am Julie Ann Mejia, and this is episode 13 of The Holistic Alternative. Today, we have an incredible guest joining us. She is a retired RN, a writer and researcher, professor, and herbalist assisting patients with a variety of conditions. She is a healthcare advocate and educates the public and traditional medical community on the benefits of cannabinoid and holistic approaches. She is a dedicated mother and caregiver to her daughter who lives with autism. Today, it is my great honor and privilege to welcome Jana Champagne to the show. Jana, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with me today.
Oh, and thanks so much for having me, Julie. I'm really excited. This will be fun.
I am too. This is going to be a great day. Thanks so much. So let's get right into it about, first of all, how did you become, working in the traditional sector, being an RN, and then getting out of it, kind of seeing it for what it is? Can you tell the public a little bit about what kind of transpired that made you switch into the holistic realm?
Yes. And so I was a mainstream nurse. I was working acute care, post-surgical in the hospital, and even critical care and cardiac when I suffered a complete health collapse. And at the time I was on a track to get my master's degree and become a nurse practitioner. And my illness changed all of that. And part of the reason why that all shifted was because I realized that the mainstream approach to my health needs were really not effective and began seeking healthy alternatives that were natural. And cannabis therapy kind of found me because I was searching for an alternative to opioids to manage my chronic pain issues that were really limiting my quality of life and function both, and found it very, very effective.
I think that's great. And I think oftentimes, like myself and other members of the community, we're looking for alternative approaches because the traditional system has failed all of us, So I think that's a huge point to take away from your story and many others in the community, why people get into the hemp and cannabis world a lot of times. So thank you for sharing that with the public. And I know your daughter also had some medical issues. Can you, if you feel comfortable, share a little bit about what transpired with your daughter as well?
Of course. And a couple of years into my own health recovery, where I had found cannabis therapy to be very, very effective and also had researched it myself and understood it has this unsurpassed safety profile, my daughter with autism entered puberty. And that for her, as it does with about 50% of kids with autism, entailed a severe puberty crisis where almost overnight her behaviors escalated to the point where they were no longer manageable. She was self-injuring. She was aggressive towards any person of authority. And she even was destroying property. We had holes in walls, holes through doors, broken glass, windows, all of the above. And this is not an unusual scenario. This is what people don't understand. This is very, very common. And this is sort of the unseen type of autism where the parents are left to try to figure it out on their own, basically. Mainstream medicine, once again, doesn't have a lot of good answers. The antipsychotics that are FDA approved for autism are Abilify and Risperidone, and then they use a bunch of off-label SSRIs and benzodiazepines. all of these medications have horrific side effects that can impair quality of life and function, or even possibly be life-threatening. So as a nurse, when my daughter entered this crisis, I objectively looked at the risk versus benefit of the mainstream approach versus the cannabis approach. And of course, it was just kind of a no-brainer that cannabis was the route that we preferred. And it did end up being very effective for her and actually spared her out-of-home placement when she was at the height of her crisis. So I'm very passionate on this topic, and this kind of explains it.
No, that's great. No, and I thank you for other parents out there that are looking for alternative approaches, because traditional pharmaceuticals or the synthetics have failed to relieve, or they've brought additional issues for their children.
Correct. Yeah, they're really awful. The side effects include extrapyramidal symptoms, which can cause motor tics or uncontrollable movements by the body. It can cause breast development in males. That one turns off a lot of parents to sons with autism. Like, their kids are already being bullied enough. They don't need to be giving these other kids more material to bully them. And then life-threatening, we have Stevens-Johnson syndrome, neuroleptic malignant syndrome, and suicidal ideation as well. So when you really weigh the risk versus benefit with cannabis therapy, which has an unsurpassed safety profile, no deaths ever attributed, the side effects are pleasurable, and people seek cannabis just for the side effects, right? So clearly it was the right option. And as I began to learn more about cannabis for autism, I learned that there's actually an underlying nutrient deficiency called clinical endocannabinoid deficiency that is common in autism, that the cannabis therapy is actually doing a little bit deeper work and helping to fill in that deficiency as well.
And that makes complete sense. I mean, considering the endocannabinoid function works in conjunction with immune support. So if you have a child with an impaired immune system and, it's not functioning optimally or functioning correctly, it makes sense to activate the endocannabinoid function.
It does. And really, clinical endocannabinoid deficiency has been linked with many, many chronic illnesses, not just autism, but migraines and IBS and fibromyalgia. And really, what the endocannabinoid system of the body does is promote homeostasis, which is our fancy term for optimal health balance. And when you consider that the underlying cause of all disease is imbalances that are ongoing, that the body has not been capable of mitigating, this really explains how cannabis can be really effective for a variety of conditions.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's a huge point. Again, we don't have a Tylenol processing system, right? We are not meant to process a lot of synthetics, and our bodies are, however, meant to process cannabinoids and terpenes. And they're found in a variety of foods and different things in the body, including breast milk and such. So again, these are natural compositions our bodies are producing. So, I never understood, working in a traditional medicine background, why it was demonized so much. And I'm sure you can kind of relate to that, with the training from the traditional route. We were told that these created all these issues. And when I actually saw for myself how much it significantly helped increase my functionality, it was just like, wow, what else did they lie to us about, Right. So it's a really concerning thing. So was your daughter born with autism? If you don't mind sharing a little bit more about, your journey with her diagnosis and how that transpired, I'd love to hear. And I'm sure the public too.
Of course. So she was born in 2002, totally healthy, 7 pounds, 12 ounces, ahead of development. I mean, she had speech, she had sign language, everything else was at or ahead of schedule for her. And at 19 months of age, she suffered a severe regression, and basically within one day had returned back to the infant phase of development, along with, a side of what I believe is traumatic brain injury that really impaired her ability to catch back up developmentally. So now at age 23, she has varying degrees of development depending on the area that you look at, but in some ways she's more like a 5-year-old, in some ways she's more like a teenager. There really aren't any ways in where she's a typical 23-year-old, and we do expect that she will require lifelong 24/7 care despite 20 plus years of therapies and intensive treatments.
Now, how has the cannabinoid therapies enhanced both of your lives, if you don't mind sharing? that regard?
Oh, just enormously. As a nurse, I had seen what happened to patients that took the opioid route for chronic pain. And I was in chronic severe pain. And just, I know I haven't talked a lot about my condition, but everything I went through can be explained by a more recent diagnosis of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which occurred in 2021. And so really the foundation of all of my health problems is this genetic collagen disruption. And thankfully, I've addressed a lot of the issues. I was actually labeled totally and permanently disabled in 2013. And today I'm working about 65 hours a week. I'm a graduate student on track to become a naturopath, plus a special needs mom full time. So clearly I've recovered.
That's amazing.
But my main ongoing issue is chronic pain because of the collagen disruption. My ligaments are too loose and my joints will randomly dislocate. And that's been made even worse, now that I'm in perimenopause. So that exacerbated it even further. So, when you see what patients do on the opioids, they end up with less quality of life, less function, and, their gut can stop working and they end up with tubes to even eliminate, that are surgically placed. Many of my patients were either awake and screaming pain or knocked out. And I don't have room for that in my life as a special needs mom. That could not be an option for me. And so luckily, my husband had a grower friend and he donated him some trim and he made me some concentrate back in, 2013. And not only did it alleviate my pain, it got me sleeping better, but it went on to actually reverse a lot of my chronic illness symptoms. And I had probably a dozen different diagnostic labels at that point: chronic Lyme disease, autoimmune lupus. I had pancreatitis. I was in chronic renal failure. My neurological system was in crisis, so inflamed that I had brain fog so severe that I could no longer write a paper, dropped out of my master's degree program 5 credits shy. So it was really, really severe. And it addressed many of those things, including what really got my attention as a nurse was that about 6 months into intensive cannabis concentrate therapy, my lupus lab seroconverted. So I went from positive for lupus on 3 different labs to negative for lupus. And I've remained negative. And so I delved into the research to find that there are thousands at that time in 2014 of reputable research studies supporting cannabis for its health benefits. And one of the studies I find actually explained that seroconversion of autoimmune is an expected effect of cannabis therapy because it can suppress the T cell function that really launches that self-attack that we label autoimmune. So it just blew my mind. And with my daughter having researched autism and cannabis, I actually wrote, I'll just do a quick little plug. I wrote an article about her outcomes in 2017 and listed all of the supporting research, which includes that cannabis helps to fill in a known deficiency for autism. Now, more recently, we have research from 2023 from Dr. Bonnie Goldstein that actually reflects in salivary biomarkers that these chemical pathways in autism that are askew and showing abnormal on prior labs will actually improve and shift towards neurotypical baseline following cannabis therapy supplementation. So we have that's molecular proof that cannabis therapy can actually promote balance in these underlying areas of need in autism. So it just, the more I learn, and we are still all learning because, to be fair, we still don't understand the plant. We have new compounds that we discover. We just discovered one a couple of weeks ago I posted about. So we don't yet know everything, but we know that it has an unsurpassed safety profile. It's been used as a millennia. This was our mainstream medicine before pharmaceuticals, was herbal medicine. So we're very familiar with it that way. And I really believe the demonization and the stigma were all for the purpose of sparing the profits that would be impacted in other industries, including pharmaceuticals, oil and gas, textiles, building materials, nutrients, animal feed. And really it's a shame. And I'm hopeful to see that improving with this new administration. So.
No, definitely. And I thank you for that, commentary, because again, a lot of people don't know that cannabinoid therapies can be, from a cognitive neuroscience perspective, it's a protectant. It's a neuroprotectant. It can help regenerate cells that have been, cut off in different capacities. So again, from an autism perspective, or even a neuropathic pain disorder, um, the results are endless for these compositions, and they help with so many things. And it's exactly what, to your point, a balancing effect. A lot of times when we're imbalanced, these help reposition our bodies to, optimal functioning. So I thank you for that comment.
Yeah. And so many people are turned off by cannabis because they might approach their mainstream medical professional, their physician or their nurse practitioner, and receive, a less than stellar response, like either like, no, don't do that, it's snake oil, or they might hear, oh, I think it's okay to use it, but I'm not going to sign for it, and I can't teach you, I don't know anything about it. There's not a lot of competent medical professionals that are able to really guide patients. So that's really a huge issue. We're still not teaching the endocannabinoid system in most medical or nursing schools. I mean, this is the motherboard of our body. It promotes homeostasis not only in the endocannabinoid system, but it's linked with every other system in the body. So it truly is, vital for life. And the cannabinoids themselves have been proven as vital nutrients. Like you said, they're the most prolific source of endocannabinoids that we produce, cannabinoids in our bodies called endocannabinoids. And the most prolific source of those is human breast milk. So if that doesn't tell you how vital these nutrients are, I've even gone so far as to blame our current epidemic of chronic illness in the United States as multi-generational endocannabinoid deficiency, because the cannabinoids used to be part of our food supply. We were feeding our animals hemp, which meant that we had cannabinoids in our meat, in our milk, in our eggs.
Right.
So even if we weren't deliberately consuming it, we had this source of cannabinoids that made our food more nutritious that disappeared in the 1930s. So I really feel like part of what we're seeing today is a cumulative endocannabinoid deficiency.
No, I couldn't agree more. And again, unfortunately, through making these products illegal, which is insane because our ancestors have been consuming, smoking, eating, applying them topically for thousands of years. And then to have such a blatant disconnection where they just cut it cold turkey, doesn't make me question anything other than the fact that, hey, something's really wrong here, and the slew of illnesses that have developed since the 30s, it's very alarming.
Yeah. And so I've worked with thousands of patients in the last decade since I stumbled into the cannabis therapy as a modality to help patients that have fallen through the cracks of mainstream. And there are so many of them, varying conditions from autoimmune to cancer to autism to other neurological to mental health. It can help so many different things. And when a patient is privy to competent medical guidance, so we're not talking about going into a dispensary and eeny, meeny, miny, mo, or going by how a product smells to determine what to purchase. We're going by what is the research support for that condition or for those symptoms specifically, and helping guide the patient to the right products. Also, the primary risk factor of cannabis therapy today is its potential to interact with pharmaceuticals that someone is taking concurrently. And so by doing that investigation and advising dose spacing between the pharma and the cannabis therapy, we can ensure that patients have, the potential to reach those optimal therapeutic outcomes of cannabis therapy. And for those patients that have been successful with their cannabis, it is common to expect that they are going to reduce reliance on pharmaceuticals with fewer side effects, better quality of life, and better function. So when I say that cannabis has been demonized because of its potential to hamper profits of other industries that are very money focused, that is one great example right there. And of course, hemp was our most sustainable resource when we founded this country. And in fact, they gave people land and said, you can have this land, just grow hemp, because it was used for so many different things that we needed to build our society as it is today. So the demonization in the early 1900s really truly was profit-driven in the interest of those industries capitalizing and monopolizing on the sales of those products that hemp and cannabis happen to compete with. So that's all it was.
a human rights violation. I think, having, when you make it, nature illegal, it's really concerning from a number of facets, but specifically to your point, when it's focal point on, gaining profit, to put another industry at bay. And again, like you stated, we're having all these new illnesses develop and different things, because of the disconnect and because it's been made illegal. So it's really concerning from a number of facets. But from a medical perspective and an advocacy perspective, what are your thoughts in regards to, as a community, how do we ensure that, like, the endocannabinoid system is getting taught in schools? Because it should be.
Right. And that's part of what I'm doing now. I actually have, I was consulting with patients and ran into issues with my nursing board because they hadn't adopted a scope of practice for nurses serving cannabis patients in Oregon, where at the time we had had legal cannabis for more than 20 years. So there was no excuse to not allow this type of service, but they actually placed a gag order on all nurses in Oregon in 2019. We were not even allowed to mention cannabis to our patients. And so I fought that, and that eventually led to the retirement of my nursing license in good standing, because in boycott of unethical policies. Because logistically, as medical professionals, we are oathed to adhere to really stringent medical ethics to protect our patients and ensure that we are serving them without bias or discrimination. And that just was not the case, correct? So really, when you consider that just logically, like, cannabis is not accessible in every state of the US. It's illegal in some states. You can be criminalized and put in jail for it, even though it has an unsurpassed safety profile, never killed anybody despite thousands of years of use. There's even people that theorize that Jesus used cannabis in his anointing oil to heal the masses. So we know this is a sacred plant. When you compare that treatment to something like opioids, which have created an addiction epidemic and are killing patients today every 11 minutes, because if you overdose with an opioid, it shuts down your respiratory center and you die. You stop breathing. Right. Versus cannabis, which they've literally tried to overdose rats on it and have not been successful. Those poor rats. Like, overdose can certainly be a little bit miserable. You can have vomiting or dizziness, and end up, having to just sleep it off, but it's not going to harm you.
Right. So, no, and that's the point. That's the point of putting functional products out there that are meant to be processed by the body. Again, no one's dying of cannabis use or hemp use, and the opiates are really concerning. I, after being injured working in traditional medicine, was put on every opiate. Not only did they not work for my chronic pain disorder, but they made me extremely sick. And I just can't imagine how many people, if they don't take the time and opportunity to explore other avenues or approaches, are left by the wayside on these strong pharmaceuticals that diminish their quality of life.
Yeah, and just the dichotomy that we freely allow opioids through prescription to anybody in the US that might want them, but we're restricting access to an alternative that in legal cannabis states, opioid deaths are down 25%. So right. Clearly it's a viable alternative for a lot of people, and we're restricting access. It certainly does not follow our medical ethics to allow patient autonomy or allow them, choices in their therapeutic options. We're not upholding informed consent in the legal states. We're not helping to guide patients and make sure that they have the opportunity to have optimal therapeutic outcomes.
And I think that's one of the biggest, heartbreaking, understanding of westernized medicine is the fact that there are no choices. It's either you take the pharmaceuticals or that's it. They don't give you many options within the traditional system.
Right. And so this all explains why in 2019, when I was shut down as a nurse consulting with patients, that I pivoted and began educating medical professionals, because I really feel that that's where the disconnect lies currently, is that if we can educate our medical professionals, a lot of them have these misconceptions, and they may think they're following ethics. They may think, oh, it's good for everything. It must be snake oil. Now we need to be discerning about what we recommend to our patients. The fact that they're not taught the endocannabinoid system science, so they don't understand that it promotes balance throughout the body. It promotes systemic balance. So if we give this to a patient, it's going to help with almost any condition.
Correct.
They're afraid of the federal one scheduling, which makes it basically illegal federally. When you look at the history of this, in 1988, we actually had a case. A DEA judge decided that cannabis met 0 of the 3 criteria for federal one scheduling.
Right.
And said it should be moved. Well, here we are, how many years later, still fighting the same fight. It's still Schedule 1 placed. So clearly, what's behind it are agendas that do not follow logic, but they follow profiteering over the health of our patients. And that is also not ethical from a medical perspective.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And from a legal perspective, I mean, we know the U.S. government has patents on certain cannabinoids. So again, how can you claim, therapeutic value and have patents on certain things, but still keep it as a Schedule 1? It never made sense to me.
Pure hypocrisy. The 3 criteria are, like you said, it's for Schedule 1 placement, it has to have no medical value.
Right.
And our government holds multiple patents specific to cannabinoids therapeutic uses. The most infamous is probably 6630507.
Yep.
The second criteria is that it must be harmful. And you can go to the DEA website and look up cannabis, and it says 0 deaths ever attributed to cannabis therapy. So clearly not harmful. And it must be addictive. And there's research supporting that as far as the physical addictive capacity of cannabis, it's less than things like caffeine and sugar, and certainly less addictive than tobacco. So why are we treating it like heroin and, other substances that can kill people? It just, there's no logic behind it whatsoever.
Yeah, it's deeply concerning. And again, if you're talking about taking an oath to do no harm, this should be taught. I mean, I think there's such a disconnect in regards to traditional system. They should be learning Westernized and Easternized approaches and use all the natural compositions first. And if all else fails, then go to a synthetic pharmaceutical. That's my personal thought and opinion. But as someone that trusted completely and blindly in the system and then became a victim of it and saw it for what it was, again, I wish I was given a choice and I wasn't, so that should be it. Choices should be part of everyone's care.
Right. And one of the ways that I try to kind of crack open the paradigms of these naive medical professionals that don't understand cannabis therapy is by reminding them that we are held to an oath that we will provide beneficence to our patients. And this means that we need to ensure that what we are recommending for them has followed a risk versus benefit assessment of all of the possible options, and that the patient has been taught on those options. And realistically, for chronic illness specifically, as a former acute care nurse, I'm not going to say it's good for everything, because if you're having a heart attack, please go to the hospital. They have medications that can save your life. Don't sit home and smoke a joint. That's not what we're saying to do. But for chronic illness, where pharmaceuticals really don't provide very many opportunities for improving quality of life and function, we still expect these patients to degeneratively decline until death, versus cannabis therapy, which can not only mitigate symptoms more safely than most pharmaceuticals without the horrible side effects, but also fill in a deficiency that may be contributing to their condition, as a foundational imbalance. Logically, we should be using cannabis as a first resort for these patients, not try all the pharmaceuticals, and when those fail, I guess you can try cannabis, which is more typical of what's happening today.
Which is so sad, because again, typically the pharmaceuticals unfortunately ruin a lot of the body, or even on a cellular level, it's cellular toxicity with some of these compositions. And unfortunately, now the damage is done, and you're trying to mitigate all the issues caused by the pharmaceuticals and then trying to reset the body back to homeostasis. And it's, to your point, it should be a first option, and the synthetic should be last option.
Absolutely.
But that's my thought too. And, in regards to another topic, right? I know you have given a lot of time and energy. You started a nonprofit, correct?
I did.
I'd love to hear about that.
Yes. So once again, this was inspired by my daughter.
Yep.
And I launched 501c3 Autism Safe Haven in her honor in 2021, following, the struggle of her being ready to transition into adulthood and be less, have her parents less involved in her care. She's an adult now. She's 23 years of age, and she definitely has some areas where she's more of a teenager and wanting those boundaries and wanting her own life. But we're not able to accommodate that because of her cannabis therapy and her reliance on that for optimal quality of life and to manage behaviors and manage her other autism symptoms, which include severe pain and migraines and motor tics, insomnia, lots of different issues that she still deals with. And cannabis is the safest mechanism to address those issues and is very effective. But unfortunately, if she were to go into a care home environment, they will not accommodate her cannabis therapy. So the mission of 501c3 Autism Safe Haven is to trailblaze cannabis inclusive autism care resources. This would be autism care homes. We're also looking at community models and autism care and retreat type of settings. And so it's we're 3-4 years into the advocacy, and our last remaining piece of red tape should fall away when cannabis is rescheduled federally, which we're hoping will happen very soon. And then we'll be green lighted and ready to go. And my home here that I'm sitting in right now is going to be our first model. My husband is a contractor, and he's been remodeling it to make it stoic for autism behaviors. So it's perfect for that purpose.
That's so exciting. Congratulations on that. And that's a huge issue. We're dealing with the same thing in the Commonwealth. I've worked with families that, they need to get their child in to either a group home or residential program or take their cannabinoid therapies in school. And there's a clause that was written into the Massachusetts statute basically telling nurses that they're not allowed to touch it. So, it's all dependent upon the state and the school system and who you're working with. We have clients out in Oregon and, the high school system in Southern Oregon that, the schools are great. They're willing to work with the parents, and the child's able to take their cannabinoid therapies if they need to. If there's a seizure induced at school, they can give it to themselves. Yeah. Other schools and other programs, they're not as supportive. So again, it's like from not only a legal perspective, but from a medical perspective, how do we mitigate that? And again, if you have a medical prescription from a physician, I don't understand why, from a legal standpoint, they're not allowed to give it.
Yeah. And it's not, part of the problem is that it's not an actual prescription. In most states, it's a recommendation, and the information that the patient receives from the physician looks nothing like a prescription. They're not given the exact product to purchase. They're not given dosing. They're not given route. Is it oral? Is it topical? Is it inhaled? So they're given a signature and basically left to their own devices to figure it out. And that's part of why I'm saying our patients require competent medical guidance, and most of them are not privy to that. And that really impairs their ability to get optimal therapeutic outcomes. It impairs their ability to have it accommodated in different settings like the school system or in a care home. It all comes back to the federal criminality of cannabis. It's sitting on that Schedule I placement. That's what makes it illegal. So once that resolves, a lot of these other issues around, cannabis patients being refugees in their state where they can't access it, things of that nature really should ease once that legislation is changed appropriately. Right now, I would love to hear somebody justify as to why cannabis is still Schedule I after reading everything, all the history about it. There's no logic to it whatsoever.
Well, yeah, they have to decide. Are they picking, in conjunction to support their patents, right? Which talks about having therapeutic value. You can't have it both ways. It's either A, non-therapeutic, or B, it is, and then you have to drop the patents. If you're claiming that it's not, it's crazy to me. It's very hypocritical for sure.
Yeah, and we definitely have a lot of patented cannabis products as well. I retired my nursing license, became a board certified master herbalist. And in my work with patients, even before that, I had really discovered that not all cannabis products are created equal for therapeutic use. There's some that really should only be left for more of a recreational use. And if you're looking for optimal therapeutic outcomes, what you want are cannabis products that are concentrating the flower and really honoring all of those 500 plus ingredients that it can produce and keeping them intact in the final product. Now that product cannot be patented because Mother Nature holds that patent and she's not selling out. So if you see a patented cannabis product, it means that it's been stripped away. It means it may have been synthesized or could be semi-synthetic. And the impact on that, as far as its therapeutic use, is that it increases the side effects, it increases the risk factors, it increases the amount that you need to take up to 75% for the same outcomes, and it reduces how the body utilizes it. With products that are like, if you took an CBD isolate, that's one compound.
Correct.
A whole plant tincture is going to have hundreds of compounds in it. So they work very differently. And that one compound, when taken in the body, actually has a bell curve response per the research, meaning as you increase the dose, it tops off. And then as you keep increasing, it falls off and stops working, versus the whole plant that as you keep increasing, it increases the effect. So it makes it a lot more predictable and a lot easier for patients to find their sweet spot, even if it might be beyond where that isolate would fall off and stop working.
Well, and that's it. To your point, it's the synergy of keeping the plant exactly how it was meant to be consumed. You're getting all the cannabinoids and all the terpenes from the raw material and finalizing it into that, end composition. Mm-hmm. So again, unfortunately, the patented products on the market currently, such as, the GW Pharma product, we won't name that, but, again, we've had parents that are coming to us and saying, hey, why does your product work so much better? And that's basically, you nailed it, right? It's the synergy of keeping the plant intact and having all the compositions work as it's meant to be consumed. And to your point, that leads into my next, thought. You've been working with Dr. Diane Powell a little bit on some research. How is that going? And what are you guys looking at right now to explore?
Yeah, so Dr. Diane Powell, for those of you that don't recognize her name, she is the researcher whose autism work inspired the Telepathy Tapes podcast.
Okay.
So she's amazing. This is a more recent collaboration. It's really just getting started. I just connected with her a couple of months ago after hearing the Telepathy Tapes. And she is collaborating with a physician who sits on my medical advisory board for Autism Safe Haven, Dr. Christian Bogner. And so I connected with her through that. I'm in Oregon. Dr. Bogner's in Michigan. And as it turns out, Dr. Diane Powell is a neighbor of mine. She lives half a mile from me, right around the corner.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you talk about the synchronicity, and it was exciting to me to connect with her because it's for the last 20 years or so, I've really recognized that my daughter is able to read my thoughts. So she definitely has these abilities. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that there would be research that could actually prove such a phenomena. It was just one of those things where it's like, wow, that's interesting. She picked up on that. And she knows these things that we don't have any clue where that knowledge came from. The telepathy stuff kind of happened after her father left. She was 5 years old and had been, after he left, she came into my bed for a while, and I was trying to get her back into her own bed and would lay there until she fell asleep. And as soon as she would get quiet, I would think, oh, good, she's quiet. And the second I would think it, she would nudge me and start laughing like, haha, no. And it happened so many times that I got to where when she got quiet, I would literally think, I'm not going to think it. I'm not going to think it. I'm not going to think it. More recently, I was in the kitchen. She was in a complete another room, no visibility whatsoever to what I was doing. I was packing her lunch, and I picked up a grapefruit, and I was studying it and thinking, I wonder if Ginny wants a grapefruit in her lunch. From the other room, that same moment, she yells out, grapefruit. So it's just like this interesting thing that's part of our lives. And part of what we've done in response is try to manage our thoughts when she's around. We try to keep our environment really chill because she's very reactive. If somebody's upset or somebody's angry or somebody's sad, she will take that on and actually express those emotions. So it's even beyond the thought. It's got to be a frequency thing is what I think.
Well, she's definitely, it sounds like an empath as well, that she can pick up on either, body language, frequencies and thought patterns as well. I mean, that's incredible. And again, working with kids with autism, some of them were nonverbal, different aspects of their cognitive functioning, they would, suppress in some areas, and, other senses took hold, right? And supported those areas of decline. So it's really interesting, how the body supports different things, especially when you're having some dysfunction in some areas, and how your body picks up in others to compensate for that.
Absolutely. And I do believe that brain injury was part of her regression. And as a neurological nurse, I've seen this in other patients where when one part of the brain is harmed, it awakens other areas. So it does make sense. And this is exactly what Dr. Diane Powell is researching and proving, this phenomena, that it exists through really rigid research studies where if you've listened to the telepathy tapes, you can go on their website and actually watch some of these videos. But they have the parent or the person who the child has exhibited this ability with in one room, has the child in another room, and has like a deck of cards, and they'll have the caregiver or the parent pick a random card and look at it, and ask that child through their thoughts to type what they're looking at. And from another room, they'll type, or some of them use a letter board and spell out what the item is. And so many of the patients were able to do that just fluidly. There was one of the patients even had like a 95% success rate. Another patient, they was blind, but they began to learn that this child could actually see through his mother's eyes. There's other phenomena, like a boy that I worked with, Jacob, who's 8-year-old nonverbal in Georgia, where cannabis is not legal, was really struggling, and his parents brought home a prescription, and they've been spelling with him, so he's able to communicate by spelling board. Very, very intelligent, and so they've started to treat him more like an autonomous person, and asked him, "What do you think of this prescription?" And his response was, "I would rather try cannabis therapy." Parents don't use it. Parents don't use it. Not legal in Georgia. They were blown away that he even knew what it was, and of course, it helped a lot. And through my interactions with them, they sent me something he had typed about the cure for autism, and said, have you heard of this thing called SOS that he's talking about? I, of course, had no idea. So I forwarded it to Dr. Christian Bogner, and that actually turned into Dr. Bogner connecting with Jacob, and Jacob teaching him about chemical pathways in autism that are not documented in our medical research, that are viable targets for autism. Now, when asked, this boy has a 500 plus IQ, and he gets his information from talking to God. So I think
amazing.
The gifts in autism, we still are a long way from fully understanding them. We're just starting to acknowledge that they're even there. And they're just starting to show us these gifts. So I think, there's so much work to do in that realm as well.
No, I appreciate everything, Jana. And I can't believe the 40 minutes just flew by. How can people get in contact with you? It's been such an honor and a privilege to have you. And I look forward to hearing all the new research that you guys are doing and everything that comes out. How can people get in contact with you if they want to support?
Yeah, the best way to reach out is through my Media Kit website, which is janachampagne.com. I noticed my LinkedIn profile is up on the screen too, and that's Jana Champagne on LinkedIn. And yeah, I'm happy to answer questions or connect with anybody who is interested in any of these topics. So thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. And we are over for today. You have a beautiful rest of the day. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you in another few weeks for another beautiful guest, and have a beautiful day. Thanks so much.
In a world craving connection, one platform dared to dream bigger. USA Global TV and Radio, a beacon for global voices, authentic storytelling, and elevated listening. Led by visionary Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, the journey from a spark to a global force is now captured in one inspiring book. Honored with YouTube's Silver Creator Award for surpassing 100,000 subscribers. Discover the evolution, the challenges, the triumphs, and the unstoppable spirit that created a global movement.
Executive producer Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang. Creative director Paul Garcia. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication, or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited. Now an Amazon #1 new release in paperback and ebook. Broadcasting Brilliance, the evolution of USA Global TV and Radio, is inspiring readers around the world. Join the movement that's redefining global media one story at a time.
USA Global TV and Radio, home of the YouTube Silver Creator Award, proudly presents Just the Thing for Your Ring, introducing the patented Ring Thing. Your premium personal ring holder to keep your ring safe, nearby, and avoid loss.
The Ring Thing just got smarter. Add your logo and an NFC tag that opens to your website with one tap. Waterproof, inner padding, and now a forever business card.
Just the thing for your ring. Scan the QR code seen here to learn more about Ring Thing or place your order. Follow Ring Thing on Instagram at ring_thing_ or go to our website ringthing.com.
From the magical world of the amazing adventures of Lady Ella comes a heartwarming new journey filled with kindness, courage, and compassion. Lady Ella, the beloved ladybug and listening mentor, is back, and this time she's not alone. Meet her brave and thoughtful brother, Lord Jack. Together, they take flight on their very first kindness adventure. Along the way, they meet 3 new friends in need: a duck feeling discouraged, a mouse struggling to be understood, and a busy little bee who's completely lost. But with the power of elevated listening and simple acts of kindness, Lady Ella and Lord Jack show us how understanding and empathy can make the biggest difference in someone's day. Written by Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, the listening mentor, this 9th book in the best-selling Lady Ella series teaches children ages 5 to 10 the essential skills of listening, kindness, and etiquette. Now available for pre-order on Amazon. Scan the QR code and order your copy today.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at USAglobalTV.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USAglobalTV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dies. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.